I was at a St. Ed's, St. Ignatius basketball game, and this guy comes out of the stands, and he looks at me and says, "Sheehan, I don't care what they say about you, I still like you." And I look, I go, "Oh, it's Mr. Bova," who I knew since I was a little kid. To be honest with you, I was afraid of him when I was a little kid going to St. Brendan's grade school. I'd see this guy, and I'm like, "Oh, there's Mr. Bova." And I all of a sudden, I'd go home at night, and I'd see Ohio State play basketball against, I'm talking so you can date this now, in the 80s. Clark Kellogg was playing for Ohio State, and I'd be watching, and I'd say, "Hey, there's Mr. Bova on the court." I'm like, "What the heck does Mr. Bova do?" My parents are like, "Oh, he's a teacher." I go, "No, he's on TV." So anyways, I got to know this man over the years, and he's an author of a book called Throwing Back the Chair. And not only that, he's just a little history about him. He's a captain of a baseball, basketball, football team at Cleveland West High. And he was ready to pursue a career, believe this, in Major League Baseball after earning all Ohio Diamond honors and playing for the Cleveland Indians farm team. However, he discovered he had a knack for wearing stripes. Not jail stripes, he wasn't going to be a criminal, but back in 1974, and I'll tell you a little bit about his story. In 1976, he was officiating Big Ten games, including the infamous Indiana game, which I'm sure we'll hear about the legendary Coach Bobby Knight and the throw in the chair in his direction. During his 26-year career on the court, he officiated, listen to this, 20 consecutive NCAA men's national basketball tournaments, including an appearance in the Final Four and numerous Elite Eight, and what's coming up this week, tonight, Sweet 16 matchups. He's also called National Invitation NIT games for 2 decades, including the 1993 championship at Madison Square Garden, and a tournament championship game for virtually every major collegiate conference. He was also the president, which I didn't know this, the Big Ten Officials Associations for 8 terms, and the director of 2 nationally acclaimed camps. He was inducted to the Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame in 2003. So we have a legend amongst us. He's a great guy, a great friend. And he spends a lot of his time trying not to throw chairs, as he was formerly watching his grandson Michael play at St. Ed's. So it gives me great honor to introduce to us our speaker, Mr. Phil Bova.
I gotta hear you. Come on. I want you to take a look at the time right now. Think about what you've done. You've clapped for a referee? That doesn't happen very often. Thank you for being here. 12 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon and listen to a referee. I appreciate that immensely. But I want to introduce to you, before I get started, a guy who I have a great deal of respect for, that is the reason that I am here, because he talked me into writing a book which took us 2 years. And this is my author, Nino Frostino. With the name Nino Frostino, you better listen to him, I said, because he's got a little mafia connections here. And he lived in my neighborhood. He'll tell you the whole story. And at this time, I'd like to introduce Nino Frostino.
Just very briefly, he's right. I lived in the same neighborhood that he did, and went to school with a couple of his kids. And Michael Bova was on the same basketball team that I was on. So I spent a lot of time at their house playing, shooting hoops in the driveway. And I would always hear the stories that Phil would come home and tell me about Tom Izzo, Gene Cady, and Bobby Knight. And I was just fascinated. I was a sports junkie growing up, and I just was fascinated by hearing these interactions from him that you necessarily wouldn't hear in the newspaper or in the magazines, because they were personal interactions. So nobody would hear about them, right? So they were just too good. So after a number of years, I tried to convince him to put this on paper because the stories were fantastic. And I thought if I enjoyed them, other folks would enjoy them as well. So after a number of years, a few years back, we decided to put it on paper. spend a lot of time just asking 1,000 questions, putting a tape recorder in the middle of the table, and having some cheese and wine, and just winding him up and letting him go. And we're very proud of how it turned out. And I'm a little biased, of course, but I hope you'll find that's enjoyable as well. So you're not here to listen to me, you're here to listen to him, so I'll get out of your way.
Thank you, buddy. Where's Brendan at?
Right here.
Okay, thank you for the nice introduction. I appreciate the way I wrote it. You said it just the way I wrote it. I appreciate that. First thing that comes out of my mouth when as a referee, were you nervous your first Big Ten basketball game? Well, guess where I had a chance to work. I had the Indiana-Purdue game. 17,000 people at Bloomington. Now I'm all dressed up. I had hair at that time. Had it parted real nice. Had the shoes real shine. Had the jacket. Says NCAA basketball. And I'm walking back and forth, and I'm having myself, I'm all ready to go. And this lady comes up to me and she goes, "Are you Phil Bova?" I says, "You bet I am." She goes, "You're refereeing this basketball game today, huh?" "You bet I am." Two top-notch NCAA coaches, Gene Cady, Bobby Knight, and nationally televised. She says, "Can I ask you a question? Are you nervous?" I goes, "Nervous? Why would I be nervous?" She says, "You're in the women's washroom." Think about it. I gotta tell you, this book that we wrote, Nino and I, is right here. It's 200 pages, and I'm so grateful to God having the opportunity to lead this in the future when my time comes for my beautiful family. I have a beautiful wife of 55 years. Can you believe that? 55 years. My fourth wife, she's a good woman. She's a good woman. And in this book, it talks a little bit about what it is to be married to a basketball referee. And without her being my right-hand girl, there's no way I was able to accomplish what the Lord allowed me to accomplish. But this book is a memoir for my grandchildren. I have 9 grandchildren, 5 boys and 4 girls. And this is kind of what the book is about. I'm not going to go into great detail. Brendan and I were talking in his chambers. He goes, "Phil, how did you start basketball? How did you possibly want to be a basketball referee?" I said, "Well, I'll be honest with you. I was at a ball game. I'm an educator, a former educator for 44 years, Buckeye local schools in Medina County. And I was becoming a teacher. So I went to Rain Junior High School on Bagley Road. I was there with a good friend of mine who wound up being at my wedding party. He was a teacher. They were playing the Browns. Walter Johnson, Paul Warfield. So the place was jammed. Sure enough, they're ready to throw the ball up. They go up and down the floor, the 2 referees, and the 1 referee turns his ankle. The poor athletic director wanted to fade. He goes, "Oh my goodness, what am I going to do?" So they roamed the stands. Who would like to referee? Everybody put their head down. I said, "I'll try it." He goes, "Who are you?" I said, "Mr. and Mrs. Bova's son, Phil." She says, "Have you ever played?" I said, "I played at Cleveland West High School. I played freshman ball as a kid." He goes, "Have you ever refereed?" I goes, "No, sir, I don't." "I do know that if somebody gets knocked out their rear end, it's a foul." He says, "Put the shirt on." And that's how it started. So I was blessed, and I'll always thank the Cleveland Browns. But we also talked a little bit about travel. I had an opportunity to travel all across the country. But being an educator, my good friend is a superintendent. He had a son. And he says, "Bo, you come into school every day. You look like you're really, really exhausted. My son is a pilot. He's becoming a pilot." I says, "How many hours does he have in the plane?" He goes, "Not very much. But I want him to learn by flying you around. Would you be willing to do that?" I goes, "Oh, okay." So very first game, I have my dear friend in the back behind me. I have the pilot. He's about 6'7", and in the book we refer to him as the praying mantis. He's a big guy. Okay, we land at the wrong airport. 5 minutes onto the floor, I walk out and go, "Where were you at?" As if I told you where I was, and it was a government-run airport. So as soon as we landed, the guy come out, he says, "You've got 5 minutes to get this plane airborne, or you're going to jail." So back on the plane and off we went. So needless to say, well, it was my first trip. The second trip is a plane crash that took place. And I will let you read about it It's a classic. I'm here. I survived, but it was really, really special to be there. Selection Sunday, Sweet 16 tomorrow. How are the referees picked for these basketball games? Obviously, the teams start way back at the beginning of the season, and they will play their regular season games. They play the tournament games, and then we're down to the Sweet 16. Well, to start out, with the NCAA, there's 96 officials, over 500 across the country. Only 96 are picked. So consequently, that's an honor to be picked. Now it's down to 48, and it'll be down to the final four. So when the final four happens in 2 weeks, they'll have a grand total of 10 officials. 6 to work the semis, 3 to work the championship game, along with a standby. And I was fortunate to be able to do that. But I really think you'll enjoy how well it's written by Nino, the process that takes place. The top 15 games, people, if you want to laugh, and I want to share a couple of stories with you today, but if you want to laugh, these are some real beauties. We don't have enough time, but the things that happen, the humor, the history, the one-on-ones with these Hall of Fame coaches and players are really something that I'll cherish for a lifetime. So I think you'll enjoy the top 15 games. We actually talk about the best of the best. I named the top referees that I've ever worked with, the top coaches that I've ever worked with, and then I named the Bova All-Decade Team. I was fortunate to be in the Big Ten for 30 years, half my life, and I picked the top 15. And by the way, a couple boys from Ohio State made the first team, one of them being our boy Clark Kellogg, so I wanted you to know that. All right, here's the story I want to tell you. People ask me, do coaches swear? Is the Pope Catholic? Come on. So I got to tell you this story, it's a classic. National television, Gary Williams from Ohio State, the great Tommy Izzo right here. Tommy Izzo at Michigan State just became the #1 coach of all time in the Big Ten for victories, just outdoing the great Bobby Knight, who we're going to talk about a little bit later on. So we got Michigan State over here. We have Gary Williams over here at Ohio State. The game is at Michigan State. There's a basket here, a basket down over here. There's the scorer's table. In refereeing, there's 3 referees. One underneath the basket, one opposite the scorer's table, and one out there as the trailer. Now, I want to talk to you about a technical foul first. A technical foul is different from a regular foul, because when you call a technical foul on a coach and or a player, that means the other team is going to shoot 2 shots. And they always teach you as a referee, downplay it, don't make it a big thing. It's a foul, but it's a little bit more, it's going to come at you pretty good versus the common foul. So keep that in the back of your mind. So here's the play. We're at Michigan State, nationally televised game, afternoon, scorer's table, lead official. I'm over here. Here comes the player down the lane for Ohio State. He's got the ball first half. Here's the player from Michigan State right there, and he says he's waiting for this play, okay? He's coming down the lane, he's coming down the lane, he's coming down the lane, and sure enough, he runs right over the top of the Michigan State player. He's lying on the floor. My partner comes out what they call a player control foul. He wipes the basket out and goes offensive foul, takes the basket away from Ohio State. Now I'm going to stop right there for a second, because what happens is there is language that happens from time to time when coaches say that F word. But we're not going to use that F word today, because we have ladies here, and I have 4 grandchildren, or 9 grandchildren, 4 granddaughters, and a wife. So instead of using that F word, our selections are faith, fun, family, and friends. Let's take the word fun. So if you hear fun me, fun you, you know what that means. Fun you understand what it means. So here we go. So here's the play. The guy on, the Michigan State guy is on defense, runs right over the top, wipes the basket out. Now here comes my partner, over to give the signal to the scorer's table. Here comes Gary Williams. He's going crazy. He wants to strangle my partner. Now I said to myself, uh-oh, there's a television timeout after we make this call. Usually we put the ball in play and off we go. But because it's a television timeout, there's 3 minutes in between before we put the ball in. You're watching the commercials, we're babysitting here. Okay? So sure, he's screaming and yelling, you're no good. So I walk over, I said, Tom, to my partner, you go over there, nice guy Phil will take care of it. So I got him away, I walk over, Phil, that was a horseshit call. That's the worst GD call. I says, Gary, relax. You got 2 minutes into the, don't use your timeout effectively with your kids. Sure enough, I turn and what do you think he says? Fun you, Phil. Think about what I said. Fun you, Phil. And everybody heard it. I said, now remember I told you about that technical foul? You're supposed to be real discreet. I couldn't wait to ring his rear end up, buddy. So sure enough, he's down here talking to his players. Nice guy Phil goes, hey Gary, fun me, fun you. Technical foul. And I rang his rear end right up. Boom! He goes, you can't do that. I said, come here. Don't you ever tell me to go fund myself when 12 kids, fund myself, think about it. 12 kids are sitting there and all the crowd's there and they're yelling, they're waiting for me to do something. So I said, don't you ever do that again. In the meantime, his assistants are sitting there like this. They don't know what to do. You keep that in the back of your mind. They're sitting there like this. Because if they say something, you have to throw their ass out. So he says, you can't do that. I said, say it one more time, you're going to be selling pencils, okay? So eventually, he apologized. Now you got to go down 10 years down the road. 10 years down the road, I go to Puerto Rico to work the Christmas tournament. Who do you think's in the tournament? Michigan State and Texas. I'm thrilled to be there. My wife's there at Christmas time, being in Puerto Rico. This is great. I got 2 young officials with me, and we're having a ball. So just before the game, you walk over, you shake hands with the coaches, say good luck. You walk over here, good luck, throw the ball up. You ready? This is 10 years after that incident. With the assistant sitting here like a Buddhist monk. Here it comes. Coach Ezzo, good luck to you. Congratulations to you. Merry Christmas. I walk right over there. You ready this? Here comes the coach out of here. He goes, the head coach comes flying. Phil, fun you, fun me. He looked at, and he goes, that's the greatest two-liners I've ever heard in my whole life of college basketball, and I had to wait 10 years for you to say that to me. You said that was the best thing in the world. I goes, you remember fun me, fun you? He goes, you bet I do. Good for you, he goes. And everybody laughed like hell. And Ezra goes, what the hell is going on? I said, I'll explain to you later, coach. But that kind of broke the ice. And so we had a wonderful game, but that coach has gone on, both of those coaches will be in the Hall of Fame. So I thought I'd share that with you about that little incident. So, and I have to tell you this. This is a beauty because there's a place called Runamucks out on the islands. And I gave a talk to the people that own that Runamucks. And I said, if you ever see Phil out and about, don't forget the one-liner. So sure enough, the next day, this is at noon I did this, like I do with you guys. The next day, we're sitting around, next evening, we're all sitting around there about 9:30, and this woman yells from the bar, she goes, hey Phil, fun me, fun you. But think about not the fun. What's that all about? So that's the one line that people remember. I have to tell you that I had the basketball game, of course, the infamous chair throwing game that never was expected to happen. When we go to basketball games, the game starts at 7:30. You have to be in the arena an hour and a half before. I don't care what game it is. You sit down with your 3 brother officials, and you go over a checklist of things that happens. Okay, we know we got 2 volatile coaches. We got 2 big guys in the post. We got to make sure we talk people out of possible fouls, 3 seconds, because so often guys just blow the whistle. I don't need to tell you, when I go to a high school basketball game and watch these referees today, I have to have a muzzle on. I want to strangle them, but I don't mind telling you. Last year with COVID, you came over to my house, you were my guest, you had to have earmuffs. It was brutal, it was brutal. So anyhow, with all that said, there's a lot of time and energy that goes into officiating a college basketball game, and we take it very seriously. But never did we ever think a game would, 5 minutes into a game, a chair would come across the floor. And this was the game where Bobby Knight was with. It was February 23rd, 1985, and I'll tell you why I remember that day, because it was my daughter's 16th birthday. And now she's 50-some years old, 52 years old. So my wife always says, if you stayed home where you belong, you wouldn't have a chair thrown at you. So, but I said, we did what we did. So long story short, the place is rocking. Gene Katie over here, Bobby Knight over here. Now there's a guy by the name of Steve Alford. How many have heard that name? Okay, now in this book, we've got some of you people love college basketball. It's all in here. You love college basketball, the book is the books for you. But we talk about Steve being an All-American player, great player. Went on to play at, of course, All-American at Indiana. Then went on to coach at Iowa, and he's done a great job. He was also, I believe, at UCLA. But anyhow, with all that said, we're going to have a situation here that doesn't go in. I'm going to tell you what happened prior, and then you're going to see the incident with Bobby. There's a loose ball in the middle of the floor. Everybody's diving for that ball. I have two brother officials come over, and we're walking over there, and the signal for a jump ball is here. So I have a jump ball. My brother official comes from that area. He has a jump ball. My other brother official, who I love dearly, he has a foul. Now it looks like the goal line stand at the stadium. Underneath there is Steve Alford, and he's got the ball like this, but evidently he saw it differently. So we had to go with the foul because that overrules the jump ball. So sure enough, we untangled, and here he has a foul. Well, I thought Knight was going to have a coronary. And you'll see that he's going like this because he wanted a jump ball. And by the way, Indiana couldn't throw the ball in Lake Erie the first 5 minutes of the game. And that consequently made it more difficult for us because there was all kinds of fouls. Now, in basketball, you foul 7 times, the other team shoots a 1-and-1. You foul 10 times, if you follow basketball, just reviewing, you shoot 2. Sure enough, 5 minutes into this first half, we're into the 1-and-1, which tells you we're blowing our brains out. And it was all against Indiana. So he was so frustrated. And you make reference to, he always wore a plaid sport jacket. And I used to tell him, and I got to know him pretty well, what, are you dressed in the dark? I could tell him that after years. He would tell me, "Oh, fun you, Phil." That's what he would say to me too. But okay, with that said, he'd take the shirt. He didn't have this. He had a golf shirt this day. So he is so frustrated. He's after, there's 2 partners I have there. He said the hypothetical 12-letter word that you should not say to him, and he got a technical foul. And that's where I'll take you right then. Now, if you have any questions, as soon as we're done with this, don't hesitate to raise your hand. So, now can we get that? See if you can get the, there you go.
Jasper's now chasing Bobby Knight back to his chair. And he's got it right there.
There's the first one.
Technical against the bench and against Bob Knight. Steve Green, an excellent free throw shooter, will have the honor of shooting the technical. Right here. Bobby Knight is first. And I think Fred Jasper,
17,000 people are on the team. He loves that jump ball.
now Fred Jaspers is called for athletic director Ralph Floyd. Fred Jaspers talking to Mr. Floyd down in the corner. Now we got Ralph Floyd out on the floor.
Now the athletic director comes out in a college game, which is unheard of.
It's 11-6. We're just 5 minutes into the contest.
And that's not a wig that I have on there.
Good chance Bobby Knight's been ejected from this basketball game.
Now they're yelling, Bobby, Bobby, in unison, 17,000 people. They're throwing dimes and nickels
Jasper, as they're
around.
trying to get to the scorer's table, now Gene King, the Purdue coach, comes over just to stay in contact with what decisions have been made. Now we got three. Yep.
Now there's 3 technical fouls called in this guy. In the 2-minute span. And that's the athletic director in the middle. He's trying to tell me and talk me into keeping him on the floor, which is impossible.
And Bob Knight is gone.
Now listen to what the play-by-play announcer says about golf.
Yeah. We talked earlier about the fact that he has golf.
Nice golf courses out here in Bloomington.
Understand that they have a very nice golf course here in Bloomington, the university course.
I'll tell you, that just kind of demonstrates the kind of year it's
Now our biggest problem is regaining control, making sure we get the right free throw shooter and administer the technical fouls correctly.
Officials took care of it in a series of technicals.
Now there's a young man by the name of Steve Reed from Purdue who's a 91% free throw shooter. He's got to shoot these
Here's
shots.
Steve Reed now. What we figure, he's got 6 shots coming.
Say hello
Okay,
to
that's
Verizon
great.
5G.
Of which he makes 2.
On 5G Ultra
Of which he makes 2. That basket looked about that big for this poor kid. Now they're throwing. Now that's going to be on. That's going to be on next. Okay, guys, when we get to thank you. He makes 2 out of 6. They were throwing dimes and nickels and quarters. I collected about $2.75 for the day. I just kept picking it up and making my phone calls when it was all over with. But seriously, I thought we were going to have a major problem. Of course, we didn't want this game to get out of control. I very simply had a good relationship with Bob. I says, Coach Knight, I'm going to share something. I whispered right in his ear. If you don't leave this confines in the next 2 minutes, we're going to call this basketball game. Now, the gray-haired fellow, the athletic director, very simply said, you're not going to throw Coach Knight out, are you, Phil? I says, be honest with you, sir, his behavior warranted him being tossed out. There's no way we can keep him. He threw a chair across the floor. And the beauty part of it is, when it landed with the baseline, and in this area here, ladies and gentlemen, were the handicap section in wheelchairs. Can you imagine had that chair hit those people? Well, I'll be honest with you now, they moved it up a little bit now. It's moved up about two rows up higher. But he was very fortunate that that didn't happen. And his behavior warranted him to be suspended for 1 game after that. Now, I went in there many, many times. Well, I had the game 2 weeks later. And when I walked out there, it's like nothing ever happened. Because Bob was he knew exactly what he wanted to do, when he wanted to do it. Now, is there any questions in this situation here? Anybody have any questions in this? Because this, yes, sir.
Who won the game?
It's a great question. Purdue handled them by probably about 13 or 14 points that game, and just had their way. It's just one of those games where the ball wouldn't go in the hole. He was under complete frustration. Him, and the beauty part of it is they always ask what kind of relationship did Katie and Knight have? Both being from Indiana, both having major programs. They got along beautifully. But that particular day, he was just miserable, and his behavior warranted. But I have to tell you this. Here's what the best part of it is. That summer of 1985, I had a basketball referees camp that's listed here. And it was rated the #1 basketball camp in the country. And I was extremely proud of this, ladies and gentlemen, because I have often said, I was very blessed. Cleveland West High School, blue-collar worker. My father was a Cleveland detective. My whole family's Cleveland police. I love the lawyers. I love the judges. I love all about law. We're all about rules. But I was said, if I could ever give back to young kids of the Cleveland area, which I had a baseball school for 45 years, and be blessed to referee at the level I did, I want to give back. I was not a supervisor, but I worked very hard at what I did. So I had, thank goodness, but I say this humbly, I had a very good reputation. So I started a referees camp where I brought people all across the country for 1 week for 25 years. That's incredible. And for a week, we bring in 75 to 80. And out of those 80 people, 12 to 13 or 14 were young women who wanted to become better. We're going to show you that tape here in a minute. But the beauty, don't let me forget. In the meantime, So I said to myself, we're going to train these people. We did it in conjunction with the camp. So when the kids were playing, we were refereeing. When they were doing their skills and stuff, we were in a room doing videotaping. Because we videotaped every single game that we did, and those people came out better referees. So one of the things that was a highlight at the referees camp was to be able to do like we're doing now. Being able to get into a mind of a coach to see how they thought about us as referees, and what do you guys think, what do we think about you as coaches? How do we dialogue? How do you think? Do you look at crews? So it was a great venue for us. It was always a highlight. So we were at Baldwin Wallace College. Steve Bankson was the head basketball coach. I said, Steve, you're not going to believe this, but Bobby Knight agreed. Bobby Knight agreed to come to my camp for an hour, flying in a single-engine Cessna. Nobody knows about it. He says, you're kidding. He goes, nobody knows about it. Would you come on at the end of the week? He says, sure. Sure enough, it was July 4th. 80 people. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being at the Boca Referees Camp. I have a very, very special surprise for you. Around that corner, how many of you think that Phil Bova was full of baloney if I tell you Bob Knight's there? Raise your hands. Well, they raised 2 hands. You know, you got to be kidding me. Sure enough, ladies and gentlemen, Coach Bob Knight. So sure enough, he walks out. They almost faded. I says, hold the chairs. They almost faded. He stayed. He was supposed to stay for 1 hour. He stayed for 3 hours. He never shut up. Now, you gotta catch this. He's going, and the more he talks, the more he's fired up, see? So sure enough, I have a young man, sits right about where you're at there, and there's a young lady who's a hearing impaired specialist. And this gentleman hired her to come for the whole week at the Bova Referees Camp. Now the girl stayed on the 3rd floor. We put her upstairs with the girls, and the guy stayed on the 2nd floor. Everything we did from the time we got up breakfast to the time when she was there doing her thing. Well, to be very honest with you, Knight starts to feel comfortable. And sure enough, when he got to the point where he starts swearing and he started using the sexual terms and all this other stuff, she was gyrating different ways, and the people were looking at her and it's like, what are you doing with these hands? To demonstrate to him what he's saying that's off the cuff. And he explains it so humorously well in that book, it will bring you laugh. But I don't know, that's as far as I'm gonna go right here. It's a beauty. So now all the attention's going to this young lady, and Knight's starting to get PO'd. He goes, hold on. He goes, what the hell's going on over here? So she turns and she says, Coach Knight, I have a friend that's hearing impaired, and he's been working so diligently over all these years. He would like to know if you hire a deaf referee in the Big Ten. And this is exactly what he said. He says, half the some bitches are blind anyhow, so what's the difference? But you have to appreciate what she does when he talks sexual intercourse or the other way. And what she's doing with those fingers and gyration, he's going like this, he's going. It was a classic, so I wanted to share that with you. I also have to share with you too, that last year, before the coronavirus, just before, I got a phone call and the telephone says, hey, Phil, we're gonna have this book signing. We heard your book is very good. We're gonna have Coach Bob Knight come. I goes, now I'm thinking, somebody's setting me up. I said, who are you kidding? He said, I'm telling you, Coach Bob Knight's gonna be there, gonna be 1,000 people. We're gonna have baseball, we're gonna have basketball. We want you there. So sure enough, it happens in Columbus. Nito was there, my son was there. And this picture here is a picture that I will cherish for a lifetime, because I didn't know that Bob Knight was going to be there until after this phone call. And I didn't know he was going to be in this kind of, how do I want to say, good physical condition, because everybody had him in a nursing home. He's 80 years old. He's 6'6", and the guy has been struggling a little bit. He comes around the corner. I come around the corner. Haven't seen him in 25 years. He comes up to me. He puts his arm around me. He says, you know, you screwed me in that game. I said, well, I didn't say screw me in that game. I said, well, let me tell you something, pal. It's a good thing I threw your ass out because Katie went out and coached you like he always does. You son of a bum. So that was great. So that's the picture my son captured. And because you've probably read about this with Krzyzewski from Duke. Krzyzewski played for Bob. They don't even talk. That's how Bob is. Bob would get in trouble in a phone booth. Okay? He's just that kind of a guy, and he plays mind games with you. But luckily I made the cut because he keeps talking to me, you know. So I have 9 grandchildren. One's going to play college basketball next year, God willing. And if I could have a choice of a coach, it would be a guy like him because he demands the very, very best out of himself, out of his players, and certainly out of the referees. Because the guys walked into that place, a lot of them were nervous, a lot of them were scared because he was such an intimidating guy. But he knew the guy, he knew the game, you either like him or you don't like him. But I think he's a great guy, and I just wanted to share that with you. So, does anybody have any questions right now? Anybody have any questions so far? Okay. Yes, ma'am.
How much do the fans influence your decisions?
That's a great question. That's a great question because what separates the men from the boys and the ladies from the women as they move up the ladder, this is Brett, I would tell you, it's a great story. As you move up, there's not a lot of people in a high school game. There's not a lot of people in some of these smaller college games. But when you go to these big arenas, it's packed. And sometimes people, they're thinking about what the fans are thinking about that. But I remember when I was a young referee, in Olmsted Falls, for example, I was refereeing a game, and this guy was all over me. He was questioning my heritage and everything. And I always learned before the game starts, find out where the policeman is. Forget the administrator, get the policeman. So I said, now I got a timeout, and this guy's all over me, man. He said, really? He probably was at the bar at 5:30, the game started at 7:30. Who's he kidding? Like he invented it, right? So he's over there. I said, hey, to the police officer, as soon as I put this ball in play, throw his ass out. So now I put the ball in play, and this guy's getting rear end throwing. I'm going, good for you. All the way up. He wants to wait for me out in the parking lot. Put your performance out there instead of here. But yes, I think as you have to tell yourself, once the ball, it's like golf, it's like bowling, whatever. Once the adrenaline gets in, it kicks in, everything falls into place. You get your ball up, and when it's all said and done, there's 10 players, there's 3 referees. Allow the kids to decide the game, let the women decide the game, and just free flow, so to speak. And that's what we try to do. And sometimes guys get caught up into that, or girls get caught up in that, and you can tell by the way they officiate the game. That's a great question. Yes, sir.
How about an embarrassing moment you might have had? Either you fell or you tripped or someone tripped. Do you have anything that you were...
You want to laugh? You ready to finish one? I'm at Michigan. I'm at Wisconsin. Now, it's one thing to have problems with coaches. It's another thing to have problems with players. And by the way, the players in the Big Ten, most of them are very, very good because they're just disciplined kids. They're usually extensions of the coaches. But Knight's kids were good. But here I am. I'm at the baseline at Wisconsin at the Kohl Center, and everything's going against Wisconsin and Iowa. I'm at the baseline here. This is a timeout. Band directors, 6 rows up with about 100 orchestra. I hear dun dun da da dun dun da 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 da. He goes, you shit me. So I walked over to my partner and says, John, he just didn't play 3 blind mice. Yeah, he did. I said, I'm not playing with a full deck either, So I walk up, destroyed. Think about it. I got a referee shirt on. You're not supposed to leave the floor. I walk up 8 stairs, and he's about to show his spirit. You the band director? He goes, yeah. I said, you want to stay the band director? He goes, yeah, why? You play 3 blind mice one more time, you're going to be selling popcorn. You understand that? Don't look at me. I'll throw your ass out of here. No, wait. I go downstairs. I'm at the baseline. For he's a jolly good fellow. For he's a jolly good fellow. And the police went crazy. Even that bench over there, Iowa bench heard it. He goes, how do you do that? And then the supervisor brings me on the phone. He goes, Phil, you can't leave the confines of the court. I says, he's not playing three blind mice when I'm refereeing tonight. So that was an embarrassing moment, but it came out to be humorous. But no, I was very, to be honest with you, I was really fortunate. I can honestly look back, and I'm saying this humbly, just like you all have wonderful things on your walls that say people appreciate it. And this guy over here, unbeknownst to me, in this book, all we were supposed to have is just a picture. At the end, just to say to the referee, but he reaches out to all these different coaches. And then when you get a guy like, Ezzo, Dick Vitale, Steve Fisher, Bruce Pearl, Gene Katie, say the things that they say after so many years that you don't have an effect on them, that's kind of enlightening. So I can honestly say that I look back and I left it all on the floor. He obviously played a price and should have, but again, I think they need to continue to do that, particularly the way that with the social media and all. It's something we have to be very careful about. When we walk onto that floor, the game is for the children, it's for the students, it's for the kids, and we have to be the best we can be at all times. And it's unfortunate to hear that. I would like him to expose that, because we don't need that, and that's why I think it's important that this FBI stays on top of all levels of sports, let alone college betting, because it's happening certainly in the pros. It's certainly happening in the pros, probably more so than college. But our college athletes are extremely precious, and we don't need that type of element. So. I set a goal for 30 years in the Big Ten, which is unheard of. The 20 consecutive games, I wanted to go consecutively. I just felt that, I spent enough time away from my wonderful wife, seriously, and my 3 children. I've got 9 grandchildren. I had those camps in the summertime. I was gone, and I could just tell that I didn't enjoy the travel anymore, to be honest with you, Brendan. I just didn't enjoy the travel. I got crazy. I used to love to fly, but it's just a lot of work to get to the games. And I was an educator, and I was also a basketball referee. Now, that I have 2 careers like I did, I was very blessed. Today, if you're going to be at that level, you almost have to be full-time, because you have to work, there's 7 days in a week, you have to work 10 days a week, if you know what I mean. They want you like yesterday. And unfortunately, the refereeing in all sports is depleting because of certainly the abuse, number 1. Number 2, being away from your family. Number 3, your job. And number 4, your health. Those are things that, when it's all said and done, you got to finish on. You want to finish to be able to live life. It's just too demanding. So when those guys get selected and work on that floor, they're in for a big challenge. But if they've done their homework, they're prepared. So I want to take this opportunity to thank you, Brendan Sheehan. You're a wonderful guy, wonderful family. Your lovely mother and sister are here to be here with us today, and I just can't thank you enough for the way you've received me, and certainly Nino. And I hope you enjoy this. Hopefully to keep you too long, but give you a little insight to the crazy world of college basketball. So thank you so much for your time now. Hey, 2 times in 1 day. Good clap.